So leaving family and home to start a new life is always very emotional and very difficult. It's a very poignant scene. Your father putting money in your pocket, buying a one-way ticket.
Telling me to follow my heart, which was something that to this very day stays with me. It was an emotional flight, the 5.5 hours that I was on that plane. I believe I didn't stop crying the whole flight. And even the stewardess, the flight attendant, she was like, really would come back really concerned. "Are you okay, sir?" You know, she asked me numerous times. And I told her, "Yeah, I'm fine. I left my, you know, immediate family behind, you know." And so she was, you know, so understanding. And so when I got here, I hooked up with my cousins, and they did give me shelter. And within a week's time, I guess the word got out, "Oh, guess what, Louie Romero's in town, blah, blah, blah." I started getting calls from all kinds of different bands. The first band that I ended up joining was Orquesta Borinquen.
Been around a long time.
Long time, yeah. It was under a different leader at the time. And so yeah, I think, of course, Borinquen has changed quite a bit, but one of my favorite bands still to this very day. Yeah, so I stayed with Borinquen for a couple of years, and that was just one of many bands that I worked with. You know, I joined Los Compas. I was with Los Compas for like 10 years.
And they've done two recordings that I know of, right?
Yeah. And I joined Candela. I was with Candela for a couple of years.
That's Edgardo Cambon's band.
Correct. Yeah. And so yeah, I was somewhat a free agent, if you will. And then I got into some Latin jazz with Larry Vukovic, you know, which even to this day, I still do some gigs with him every once in a while.
He's a famous local piano player,
right?
And you know, known for playing Latin jazz,
right? And so all these different bands were calling me, and that was giving me the sustaining my life, you know, if you will. I was making some fairly decent money, and that's how I managed to stay out here all this time.
Yeah, at that time you could actually live on the income that you made. San Francisco's a lot like New York these days. Many people are being priced out. But back then you could have a good living. And
yeah. And I worked with numerous bands. As I said, I was a kind of a free agent, so I wasn't really obligated to one particular group, so that my calendar was like really filled up. You know, I had very few free days, to the point that, you know, it was close to burnout, and that's when I decided to make my own group. You know, so, you know, I'm working really hard with all these different groups when in fact I should be making it easier for myself, you know, and still having a substantial income coming in. So yeah. So
you've just celebrated your 20th anniversary with your group Mazacote, and I had the honor to see you perform. It's probably one of the best dance bands, not only the West Coast, but maybe United States.
Thank you.
And your repertoire includes some of your standard Fania, but you know, you've expanded. It's a much broader repertoire, all of them danceable, because you're known as one of the Bay Area's top dance bands.
Right.
Tell me about how Mazacote has evolved over these last 20 years.
I think of Mazacote all the time as new and improved. You know, it's a group of guys, musicians that I love very much. These guys are so dedicated and really fantastic musicians that, you know, they're always wanting to be better at their craft. You know, there's no problems with attitude or anything like that. Everyone's like totally professional, and this includes, you know, I have a core group, and there are times because the guys are so fantastic in what they do that they're in high demand. So there are other groups that will want to, you know, like 6 of my musicians now are with the Pacific Mambo Orchestra.
They recently won the Grammy.
Yeah, including the co-leader, right?
Right.
They, you know, Grammy winners. You know,
Right.
I mean, who? You know, that's a pretty good deal right there.
Right.
So even with that though, if I have substitutes coming in, they're high caliber, really, you know, team players, and so that Mazacote sustains itself in that way that, you know, for me it's about humility and integrity. Those are 2 important characteristics, you know, that I find invaluable, that need to be present in order to succeed. You know, it's not about, you know, dog eat dog. It's about, you know, just coming from the heart, like, again, follow your heart kind of deal. You know, these are the kind of musicians that I like to be surrounded by. You know,
when they clearly have a lot of love and respect for you in their interactions, they always defer, and not only because you're the band leader, but you've earned it. I was sitting next to a percussionist who knew every lick, every break, every song. He was like singing next to me through your entire set. I felt like he was getting prepared to sit in with the band or become your next. But he did it because you play those songs so perfectly and so well orchestrated that if you know the music, you know exactly what's coming up. And that's a testament to you and the quality of your musicianship. We've kind of done the whole arc of your life, but I asked you to bring those, I was going to call them CDs, but let's go way back now, LPs, long playing albums.
Right.
I asked you to bring, you know, those that you felt were the key pieces of music in your life that either you'd recorded or music that influenced you. And I always love to get into people's heads to see how they were formed, what influenced them. So you've got a stack in front of you. I'm going to pull this camera back a little bit. Maybe we can talk a little bit about some of what you brought.
Okay.
Why don't you pull out one, your first one. Tell me a little bit about it.
All right, this one right here, top percussion, right?
Tito Puente, top percussion.
This is like, you know, I also teach percussion. I teach at the Mission Cultural Center. I also teach private. And this is one of the references that I give to my students. Top percussion, Tito Puente. He also recorded another one called Puente and Percussion.
Right, and that's got Willy Bobo on it. I think
it's got Julito Collazo.
That's right.
It's got Mongo Santa Maria. It's got, I mean, let's see, who else is on there? Julito Collazo, Mercedita Valdez, Marcelino Guerra. You know, it's a bunch of really fantastic musicians on here. Vigilio Martí. And so this right here was like one of my practice records. You know, I would listen to this over and over and over and over and really want to get, you know, as much as I could out of it. Even to this very day, you know, I'll still put this on every once in a while and say, did I miss anything? You know.
And it's amazing how you always, you know, there's always something that you hear new.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Something that, again, that I tell my students, you know, music appreciation is a very important part of your studies. It's not just about learning your fundamentals, you know, your rudiments. It's about really getting into the music and listening to not just the drums, but also the horns and, you know, the bass and the piano and the whole deal. Because the more you understand the makeup of what is being produced, the better you're going to be at what you do as far as a player. You know.
Let's see your next one.
The next one is also.
Are there 10 there, by the way? We can call them Louie's top 10.
My top 10.
Louie's
Cuban
top 10.
Carnival.
Cuban Carnival. Again, Tito Puente, that seems to be a theme in your life, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, again, he was one of my big influences in my life, you know. So now on this one, it has Palos Rumberos, which Santana did later on, right? Along with Oye Como Va. But this is the original recording, Palos Rumberos. And this was a very hard tune to play. And I used to practice to get that as perfect as possible. You know, that helped me with, again, arrangements, learning about arrangements, learning, you know, how to change from the cascara to the shell to the bell, the campana, you know, how to just segue, if you will, from one part of the instrument to the other. And not to mention the Palos Rumberos, I mean, timbal solo, like, incredible, you know.
And I heard Tito Puente interviewed talking about thanking Carlos Santana for Oye Como Va. He says, Carlos gets all the credit, but I get the royalty check.
I used to hear that in New York for a long period of time. It was somewhat controversial, if you will. This one here, Machito and his Afro-Cuban Orchestra, Mambo Holiday. Now, the incredible thing about this, I was pretty young when this came out, and I loved it because I loved the bongocero, only to find out later on that I would be playing with the son of the bongocero who's in here. Jose Mangual Sr. is playing bongo on this. And so I used to practice my bongo chops to this particular LP. And then later on, I end up playing with Jose Mangual Jr. and the Willie Colon Band. This one here, Tito Rodriguez, Big Band Latino. I love this recording because it's got the fact that Tito Rodriguez introduces all the band members, including Cachao, was playing bass in this.
Wow.
Yeah. And Victor Paz, Vitín Paz, and Chocolate. These are some of the musicians in this recording. This is, to me, one of the best recordings. Not only for the fact that he's got such incredible musicians like Cachao and the other guys I mentioned, but because you could hear the humility and integrity of Tito Rodriguez as he introduces all the musicians, how he shows the love and respect for every one of his members, you know, and pretty amazing. I don't know if you're familiar with this recording.
It's a beautiful recording.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And this one, Demasiado Caliente.
Wow. Hey, maybe I should block out the image.
You need to pixelate.
That's a little racy there for what,
well,
1960?
Yeah, no, this is like, yeah, maybe early 60s. This goes way back. This particular recording, the reason I brought this out is there's a tune in here called Mom Blues, which Willie Bobo is playing timbal on. Mongo Santa Maria, Willie Bobo, Armando Peraza, I believe, is on here as well. The timbal solo that Willie Bobo takes in Mom Blues, one of the best timbal solos I ever heard in my life. And so this was another one of my practice records. This was like, I want to play like Willie Bobo. You know, so basically,
I'm going to learn every lick he does, and
absolutely,
yeah,
to the best of my ability. Let's see. Then I get into another phase in my life with the help of Milton Cardona, who was a conguero for Willie Colon and played congas with Eddie Palmieri, Hector Lavoe, many people. One of my brothers. He introduces me to this album. He says, "Lou, you want to learn about Descarga?" He said, "This is the album to have." I said, "Well, who is it?" "Oh, this guy, Israel Lopez Cachao, El Negro Vivar, Guillermo Barreto, Tata Guines, Yello Iglesias, Gustavo Tamayo." He says, "Check it out." I got hooked.
You and many people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cachao invented
And
that form.
I've gone through many record stores. You know, I'm an avid collector of vinyls. You know, and if I see a Cuban jam session of any type, that especially if it's got cachao in it, you know, it's in my library. Now this one here, Mr. Bongo.
Jack Costanza.
Jack Costanzo, Italian guy from Chicago. Plays bongos like nobody's business. This is the guy that got me hooked on bongos. Yeah, my first pair of bongos, I was 14 years old. Got them for Christmas. Christmas Eve, I opened up the package. My mom allowed us to open up one gift, Christmas Eve. I'm like, okay, where's my bongos? Because somebody, you know, put it out there. Hey, guess what? You're getting bongos for Christmas. And I'm like, okay, where are they? Well, I get the bongos out, right? And of course, I put this album on, and the next day I couldn't make a fist. Yeah, yeah. It was that's how intense that the night got, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So my dad was like, okay, Lou. Here's some ice packs, you know. He took some towels and put some ice cubes in it. Hold these, you know, for a while. But yeah, this is a major influence in my life, and I get to see Jack Costanzo at the NAMM show when I go. And in fact, I had told him the last time I saw him that I had this, and he was like really thrilled, you know. So yeah. Now this one, the reason I included this in my collection is that I was there that night at the Beacon Theater.
When it was recorded in New York
when it
City.
was recorded, yeah. And Tito Puente and Orestes Vilato have a kind of a dual thing going on where it's pretty intense. You see, definitely the contrast between the two, the different styles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but this is so. The fact that I was personally there for that night, and then to see, you know, have it on vinyl, I'm like, oh, this is.
And then see two of your favorite timbaleros.
Two of
go
my
at
favorites. Oh yeah, Orestes. Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
one of the best. You know. This one here, Sergio Mendes and Brazil '77. This is Primal Roots. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. Sergio Mendes, I was not a big fan of till I heard this. After I heard this by the way won a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard this recording, I was totally blown. It made me gain the respect for a man that I thought was just into the kind of commercial pop kind of deal. And when he came out with this, and I heard it, I was like, wow.
Well, the band there is Brazil '77. He came out in the '60s. It was Brazil '66, and he was known for playing bossa nova and kind of the more
kind of
pop.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was listened to on the radios.
Right.
It was pop for sure.
Yeah.
But this is the evolution of his.
This is the real, you know, the real substance, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
of the Brazilian music. And he came out with another, which I believe won a Grammy as well, called Brasileiro,
Mm-hmm.
which is fantastic as well. I mean, this is what, you know, shows the real, you know, the real deal, not the commercial stuff. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to your next one.
So we got the last one of the top 10. This is one that I recorded with Willie Colon and a slew of musicians. This took us 2 years to put together. This was for a show on PBS, which was called Realidades. And basically what we did, it took us, again, 2 years to get all this together, the soundtrack. And then the soundtrack was given to the ballet company, and they put the choreography together based on the music. this is one of my prize projects. I mean, I'm working with people here like Andy Gonzalez, Louie Kahn, Tom Malone, who plays for the David Letterman Orchestra trombone, Eddie Martinez, Kermit Moore, Alphonse Moussan, Victor Paz, Bobby Porcelli, Mario Rivera, Barry Rogers. I mean, these are just a few of the musicians on this. So this is quite for me, quite a beautiful, experience that I've had in my musical career.
Well, Louie, you're a famous musician, you're a teacher, you're a fan, and I always end these interviews thinking of that student in mind, that person that might want to follow in your footsteps. And I always kind of end all my interviews in the same way. What advice would you give a young musician who wants to follow in your own footsteps? I want to be Louie Romero. What's the formula? What's the secret?
Well, okay, so what you just said is actually counter to what I tell my students. Because I don't want my students to be Louie Romero. I want my students to be themselves. So my advice to my students or people out there who might be interested in learning percussion, learn all your fundamentals, right? All your rudiments, and then create your own signature. It's like, doing penmanship, right? It's like an autograph, Everybody learns how to write and blah, 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 and then you have your signature. So this is kind of like, my part of my philosophy as far as, people out there who are interested in learning, and whether it be, drums or any other instrument, I think that totally applies. You don't want to sound like somebody else. You want to sound like yourself. You want to have your own signature.
Armando Peraza used to talk about that when he was coming up, everybody tried to be different. They wanted to have their own sound, their own unique signature style. In his case, he also danced and did a lot of theatrical things. But he says in today's music world, it seems like everybody wants to sound like just a handful of people, whether it's congas or timbales. So that supports your teaching quite well.
Right. It comes back to my dad telling me, follow your heart. I think that's really important. I think people, with everything that's going on in the world today, we kind of lose that. We get so wrapped up into what's going on around us, rather than going inside, inside your soul, your spirit. That's something that through the years, School of Hard Knocks, that I've learned, to understand more about what makes me happy, what enables me to make other people happy. So that's, like, for me, extremely important. There was a time in my life that was quite chaotic, if you will. But I managed to turn that around, and just that's what I want to keep doing. I want to just keep making people smile, dance, have a good time, celebrate life. It's too short, too precious. We've heard that many times, but yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Louie Romero. I'm so honored to know you and collaborate with you on occasion, and representing Latin percussion on the West Coast. I always feel you're one of those icons. This year, Latin percussion turns 50 years old.
Yeah.
You've been playing a lot longer than that.
Oh yeah. And Latin percussion and I, we go way back. I mean, there were. I was talking with Marty Cohen, the last NAMM show that we were hanging out with. I was telling about, you remember the time that I went over to your house with Gene and Milton, and we recorded some stuff, and it was never released though, and he says, oh yeah, I remember those days. We went over to his house. It was a bad blizzard. It was really, in fact, one of the tunes we did was called Snowbound. Yeah, and I talked to him about that, and he was just kind of had a nice smile and saying, oh yeah, I remember those days, yeah. So yeah, it's been a quite a beautiful trip, you know.
Well, you've made many people happy for decades, not only with your music, but also many students of yours have gone on to do great things, and reflecting that you start with the heart.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for
You're
everything
very
you
welcome,
do.
Arturo. Thank you very much. Yeah.